was always the Jags. Always the Jags.
It's always the Jags.
Always the Jags.
Welcome into Always the Jags, your podcast for everything Jacksonville, everything Jaguars, everything Duval. Today it's time to break down that magnificent win that the Jaguars started the season off with the victory over the Carolina Panthers. Again, should have been expected, as Pete Prisco and many people said. If the Jaguars didn't win this game, we would have had very big problems. That would have been a huge issue, but we did. And we didn't just, I thought it would be close. I said it would be close. It was not close. It was not close. I wouldn't say it was domination. I think domination would have been if Andrew Wingard had gotten a chance to return that pick six. But then, a ticky-tacky penalty called that back. 30-3, that's domination. This was control. We controlled the game throughout the entire time. There were some moments, some scary moments here and there for Jags fans watching, but overall we came out with the victory, one that, honestly, the Panthers were not threatening from the moment. The best chance the Panthers had to win the game was when the score was 0-0. That is a controlled game. So let's talk about the good, let's talk about the bad, and let's talk about everything that we have in Liam Coen's head coaching debut for the Jacksonville Jaguars. First of all, still really love the direction that James Gladstone is going in. Still love the direction that Liam Coen is and the way he's taking over this offense. The most impactful player, or the most important player, I think, to Liam Coen's offense is unequivocally Brenton Strange. Like, if our season is successful, I feel like he's going to be why. He already has my MVP vote for the Jaguars. And not just because, we've got superstars all over the team, right? Travis Hunter, superstar in college. Brian Thomas Jr., superstar. Josh Hines-Allen, superstar. And Trevor Lawrence has been a superstar everywhere he goes. Brenton Strange is a very unsung guy on the team. He's a starting tight end, but he's very unsung. He's going to be the reason why this offense works. And I'll tell you exactly why. If you go back and watch that game, and this is why it's so great to have a tight end who can both block and catch, why guys like George Kittle can make your offense go. Every single big play, like on the Brian Thomas touchdown, every single big play, it was predicated on Brenton Strange, what he was doing, and how the defense was confused by what he was doing, right? On the Brian Thomas Jr. reverse, Brenton Strange was going to the right. The defense thought it was going to the right. And then at the exact moment, right moment for the motion, he stops and goes the other way and throws out a fantastic lead block that allows Brian Thomas Jr. to get into the end zone. And the reason why the whole defense followed with whatever Brenton Strange was doing is because he was mauling guys in the blocking game this entire game. He was they showed one block where just with his elbow, he completely knocked the guy over. And it wasn't even that big of a play. But if you look at the 71-yard touchdown, Brenton Strange is right there, throwing a key block. And again, that's the difference with having a guy like Brenton Strange, that tight end, because you don't know when he's in the game, like when Evan Ingram's in the game, again, Evan Ingram is a willing blocker, but he's not as good of a blocker as Brenton Strange. So when Evan Ingram's there, they're probably going to pass because he's in the game. Or if they're blocking, Evan Ingram's going to do his best, but is he really going to block me? Yeah, not really. Brenton Strange was laying the wood on guys. He was just completely taking them out of the play. And that's the kind of thing that will give you a great one game. And also, Brenton Strange has fantastic hands. Every single tight, if I'm not mistaken, there's one tight window throw Trevor made to De'Ami Brown. Every other tight window throw, Brenton Strange got it. And Trevor Lawrence was fitting the ball into some really tight windows, and Brenton Strange got it. And every time he needed to be bailed out, when I was looking at watching this game, every time we had a big play, every time we had a third down, when something was happening, Brenton Strange was the guy making it happen, whether it was blocking or whether it was just catching the ball on 3rd and 9 and getting us that first down. He's going to be a huge part of this offense. And, we already knew that Cade Otton did really well in the Liam Coen offense back in Tampa. but he wasn't really the engine for it because I don't think he was as good of a blocker. I think Brenton Strange is a better blocker and a better pass catcher than Cade Otton. And I think Liam Coen knows that, and he's pivoted his entire offense to follow Brenton Strange. And all that's going to do is continue to open things up for Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter. And I think the way that the Panthers play defense in this game, because their defensive line is not their strength, which you could kind of tell, but their secondary is a lot better than their defense because they got J.C. Horn back there. So I think they plan to try to limit Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter. So if you're wondering why we didn't see them involved as much, it was kind of a pedestrian game for both of them. Even though Brian Thomas Jr. had that touchdown, we did most of our damage on the ground. And I think that's part of the game script of who you're playing, right? The Panthers have a better secondary, and the Panthers are afraid of our superstar wide receivers. I think you're going to see, and also, again, Liam Coen has a zone blocking run scheme that he likes to use to open up the pass game. I think you're going to see a very different team, different style when we go play the Bengals, right? But that's just what I want to first say. Brenton Strange is so far my MVP for the team, and he led the team in receiving, and he was just throwing out, again, the most vicious blocks, because there are guys that can block, like, blocking like wide receivers have to block cornerbacks, right? If the guy's running the ball, wide receivers have to be able to block on the edges. That's something Brian Thomas Jr. is pretty good at. I think De'Ami Brown might be he has the best size for blocking because Travis Hunter is still small. But all those guys, they have to block. When the ball, if someone's coming around the edge, if the running back makes it to the outside, they got to block too. The difference is Brenton Strange can block anybody. Brian Thomas Jr. is not blocking a defensive end. Brenton Strange leveled the Panthers' defensive ends. Now, can he block a defensive tackle? It depends. Those guys are pretty big. But he can at least move the guy off the mark and get him away from the ball carrier. And Brenton Strange can block anybody. And that's what makes him so valuable. Like, you wouldn't really want, like, Brian Thomas Jr. against a linebacker, there's probably a good chance the linebacker is going to get off that block. He can probably take a cornerback because they tend to be scrawnier so they can be faster. But Brenton Strange, I would love to see him go against Fred Warner. That would be fun. But give me any linebacker, any defensive end, any safety, any corner. He can block them all. He has the strength to do it. And I think watching his ascension, and I was a guy that didn't really like the pick when we first made it. And man, do I love being wrong. I am wrong. I am so happy to say I am wrong. Brenton Strange is a beast. And I am sorry if I ever disrespected you for us taking you in the second round. It was that was the best move that we could have made, right? And I even said, like, maybe we could stand to get some more tight end depth. Hunter Long made a nice catch, and I think he has some nice blocks. I still wouldn't mind getting a guy like Darnell Washington from the Steelers if he's available or something like that, just because I still do feel like if Brenton Strange goes down, we are kind of messed up. But it was nice to see Hunter Long get involved, so we feel a little less worried about that. Because, again, every time Brenton Strange throws out those blocks, he's putting his body on the line, and that only increases the chances of injury. So, but again, Brenton Strange is currently my MVP for this entire Jacksonville team. Like, I think he was the best player on the field on Sunday. Like, game balls, when they were giving him out, Brenton Strange gets it hands down, and not just because he led the team in receiving. If we look down, and again, if we look at the offensive line now, the thing I was so impressed with was they were blowing holes open in the run game. And again, the Panthers defensive front, not that great. We already know they gave up a lot of rushing yards last year. They lost some of their best linebackers. Their best defensive tackle, Derrick Brown, was back. But I thought when you only have one guy on that defensive line in Derrick Brown, the best way to neutralize him is double him and then let everyone else carry out the one-on-ones. And I think there were a couple of times where Robert Hainsey by himself or Ezra Cleveland by himself, either one of the two, got the best of Derrick Brown. I don't think they had him doubled all game. I don't think they had him doubled for the entire game. I think there were times where they did double him, but I don't think the entire game they felt like they had to double him. But our offensive line was just blowing holes open for the run game. And again, I don't know if it was scheme because we do have new guys. I don't know if Ezra Cleveland is just playing better because he's better from his injury. But man, they were running the ball with ease. It really felt like they were running the ball with ease. And I think, Patrick McCarry is probably very used to running the ball as he was blocking for Derrick Henry last year. So I think his addition helped. And again, I was one of those guys that was kind of questioning the Robert Hainsey signing. But James Gladstone was right. If you watched whatever Robert Hainsey brought in the Saints game when Graham Barton went down, whatever issues he had with run blocking before Graham Barton got drafted, he might have fixed them because they were, like I said, blowing holes open. Guys were able to get right through, and not only that, the pass protection was phenomenal. And again, Panthers defensive line not great, and I think the Panthers dropped back in coverage a lot because they were afraid of those receivers, and so I don't think they didn't bring a lot of blitzes, but even when they did, those blitzes got picked up. And I think they mainly rushed 4, if I'm not mistaken. It was a lot of rush 4s, but the Panthers, they couldn't get any pressure on Trevor. He had all day. Honestly, with the kind of time that he had, I'm almost leaning towards like the Jaguars probably should have put up closer to 35 or 40, right? I mean, at some point, like, again, 0 sacks, barely any pressures. I think they got 1 hit. And he was getting the ball out very quickly. But there were a lot of plays where he just had time. Panthers were nowhere near him. They couldn't get close to him. And again, I don't know if that's the difference in offensive line coach, because our offensive line wasn't playing that well last year. And again, it's only 1 game, so we'll see. I think the Bengals defensive line is better at pressure, and it's hard to know if they're better at run defense or not. Because BJ Reader isn't quite as good as he used to be. And the only guys the Bengals have is Trey Hendrickson on the defensive end. So if you're able, again, Derek Brown, I think Trey Hendrickson is better than Derek Brown at getting to the quarterback, but Derek Brown is known for his run defense. But if they're able to double Trey Hendrickson and neutralize him, will the Jaguars have the same amount of time to run? That's what we'll see. We'll see. This line will get tested when it goes against a better defensive line. But obviously, so far, so good. I mean, I was watching that game, and I was just like, wow. And that kind of, like, I would say I like the way Trevor played because we got the win. But I do think if you have that much time, based upon the guys that you have outside and your pedigree, I think Trevor could have even played a little better. I do think that he could have done more carving them up. Now, he did a great job finding guys in space and making tight window throws when he needed to be. Some of them were very risky, but he trusted his guys to make the plays. And this is his first outing in Coen's offense. Like I said, it was a very good outing. And this was a great defense to kind of get the first look at, work out the kinks almost. But yeah, no, I do think there were some throws that Trevor missed. There's some guys that he had open. Overall, he played well, right? I think he missed maybe about 3 or 4 throws if I could really count, and that probably would have made a bloodbath. And then you have the interception, which I think is more of a great play by J.C. Horn than Travis Hunter. But I've heard people make good points about how Trevor could have mitigated that by freezing J.C. Horn just in looking off the safety. Doing things like that can really open up and allow those guys to get open when they do, because that was a touchdown waiting to happen, right? And like I said, had he done that, maybe Travis Hunter would be leading the offensive rookie of the year race right now. But we'll see. I think this was a great game for us to get started and establish, the fact it felt, I'm not gonna say vanilla, but it felt like very calm, very collected. Like the offense was efficient, and it wasn't even really that explosive. Like we didn't really see the explosive. We had the explosive elements in the run game, like I said, blowing open those holes, Travis Etienee on that 71-yard. But it's kind of like we didn't really need to do much to move the ball. It felt very effortless, right? And so I think we're going to be tested a lot more against the Bengals, especially going up against their offense. Because again, defensively, we were able to harass Bryce Young, make him uncomfortable. And I don't want Panthers fans to be too concerned with Bryce Young's performance, even though the Jaguars defense was horrible last year. But he did have 2 good pass rushers in his face. I think that I wouldn't undo all the good things that Bryce Young did last year, because T-Mac looks like a dog. He looked like a dude in that game. And I apologize. I have to make another apology to Jaguars players, because I apologize to Tyson Campbell, because I predicted that Jerry and Jones might be coming for his spot. And if you want to see how wrong I am, look no further than the one play where Jerry and Jones was covering T-Mac and he had to hold him in order to prevent him from catching the ball. Ended up being a really big penalty. Compared to the almost touchdown by T-Mac, where he goes up and gets it, I think, with one hand, and is about to pull it in, and at the very end, Tyson Campbell just rips it away. Absolutely ripped. It was like that was the moment where like you took a knife and just drove it into the Panthers like stomach, because it looked like a big play. Bryce Young to T-Mac, kind of what we were expecting, and Tyson Campbell's like, nah, nah, and it was single coverage. T-Mac already looks like a guy that needs to be double covered, and that's partially because the other Panthers receivers weren't helping out very much. Xavier Legette just kind of had a boneheaded game, and I hate to say it like that, but like to not get 2 feet in bounds and just he was a guy that I really liked coming out of college, and I wanted us to draft him not over Brian Thomas Jr., but I wanted us to take Mitchell in the first round and then wait and try to get Legette in the second. I'm glad we decided to go for Brian Thomas Jr. Is all I gotta say. That was the right call instead of going cornerback in that draft. So we'll see. Hopefully he'll continue to develop for them and for the sake of Bryce Young. So I wouldn't overreact. And again, the Panthers, and when it came to our defensive line, we were able to harass Bryce. We didn't get a whole lot of sacks and pressure, but the Panthers have a good defensive line. The main thing I was concerned about was our run defense. It appears like the Panthers were able to keep running the ball. And I'm surprised they didn't stick with it too much. I think once they kind of got into hurry up with a couple of takeaways, so they couldn't keep running the ball. But clearly it was affecting us, and it was effective because we let some pretty big holes and we let some guys get through. So that's something, if I'm James Gladstone and I'm looking at the way the team performed and I'm looking at ways I can make it better, I don't know, another pocket pushing DT to put next to Eric Armstead that can stop the run. Because it felt like Devon Hamilton's back, whatever happened to it, he's just not the same guy. And for Mason Smith to be inactive, I'm not, like, he was showing a lot of things last year and we were happy to get him back. I don't know if it's injury or what, but it's a genuine concern because that's a second round pick from last year. So we'll continue to see. And right now he's backing up Eric Armstead, but that's not a good sign. It's not a good sign for him to be out again. But yeah, the Jaguars already made another move by trading Tank Bigsby to the Eagles. So clearly James Gladstone is not afraid to make moves. We already knew that, right? But and you could kind of tell he would kind of end up. I felt like he was going to be the odd one out, and I wish I kind of had done this before the trade had happened. But when I was looking at the rotation, I was like, man, Bashal Tutin brings that same power as Tank Bigsby, but he's also got that speed and that explosiveness. It feels like Bashal Tutin feels like a combination of Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby. But Travis Etienne just played too good yesterday for us to let him go. And he showed a lot of veteran savvy because like he's done this before. There's a lot of plays where he made cuts into the right holes. He was bouncing off guys. He was able to shake tacklers. And it felt like even on that 71-yard run, he didn't look quite as fast as he used to be. A lot of people say like if that was Tutin who broke it to the outside, it might be a house call, and maybe so. But I feel like Travis Etienne was able to break it to the outside because of his veteran acumen and knowing what guys do in this league. The way he was able to put his foot in the ground and just turn the other direction. Travis Etienne had a fantastic game. Fantastic game for fantasy purposes too. But when we saw LaQuint Allen get in there and he made a great catch, made a great run, and he picked up a blitz really, really well. And that makes me feel like I want LaQuint Allen next to Trevor Lawrence because he's so smart and he's so good at picking up. It's like we have an extra offensive lineman on the field and a guy who actually, again, can catch. And so all of that. And I think Tank Bigsby wasn't that great in pass protection either. Like he had the frame for it, but he didn't really have the smarts for it. And Travis Etienne did a lot better in picking up blitzes and things like that. So I think the coaches saw that and decided that getting a fifth and a sixth for Tank Bigsby is a modest return. I think if we waited closer to the deadline where guys start to go down, we could have got a fourth for him. But either way, everybody is excited to see Bashal Tutin in the backfield. I think it's Travis Etienne's game until, honestly, I wouldn't take the ball out of his hands until he fumbles. I mean, he's playing extremely well, right? And he's showing that he deserves to be on that field right now. So, kind of moving on to the defense. I was always happy with Jourdan Lewis. I actually got to meet him a couple of days at they were doing like a card signing event up here in Jacksonville. Make sure you follow on social media, follow the Jaguars because you'll see stuff like that and you can get over there and the Jaguars players are doing stuff in the community. And if you can be a part of it, it is super awesome because it makes you feel super connected to the team. Like I said before, his parents both, he went to Cass Tech High School back in Detroit, just like my parents. And I got to tell him, and he was like, "Oh, what? You know that?" He was like, "Oh, wow, that's crazy, man." He's like, "What a coincidence." And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Obviously, they went there, a little bit before you did, but it was still cool. There's something that a Jaguars player knows about me that he'll probably remember." I wonder if he thought about that when he made that fantastic interception. But no, he played fantastic, and he looks like a great pickup for our nickel cornerback spot. And again, originally I had said that I kind of wanted to. I'm like, if we could have saved the money on Jourdan Lewis and Eric Murray and gotten like a top flight safety by having Jarrian Jones play on the outside and then switch to nickel and put Travis Hunter on the outside. And it looks like that's what we're gonna do, but with Jourdan Lewis instead. And I think it makes sense after watching Jarrian Jones come in for a play and then Tyson Campbell come in for a play. And again, as good as Jarrian Jones has looked in at camp, I think I'm comfortable with him backing up Tyson Campbell. And I think I'm comfortable with, okay, Tyson Campbell and Jourdan Lewis start on the outside, nickel downs, Jourdan moves inside, we bring Hunter in. That'll work. That'll work for me. And I think eventually it'll flip flop to where Travis Hunter becomes the number one QB. And when Jourdan Lewis goes into the slot, either Jarrian Jones or Tyson Campbell will be the guy coming in. So Travis Hunter will be on the field all the time. But eventually we'll get there. For right now, I think that's how we're going to play with the Bengals. I think whenever Jones, I think whenever Jourdan Lewis moved inside against the Panthers, they put Jarrian Jones opposite him. And then they had Travis Hunter in there. He was only there for 6 snaps, but I know we didn't play nickel for only 6 snaps. So I think right now Travis and Jones are splitting that. Okay, what do you do when Jones comes into and when Lewis comes into the nickel? But he had a fantastic game. I think he was probably, I don't know if he was, no, Foye Olukun was the best player and the most impactful player on defense. But Jourdan Lewis was all over the place. He had a great blitz. He had a great interception to seal the game, and a couple of really good pass deflections. And, it made our secondary a lot stronger in an area where now that because that position is strong, because, like, again, last year, our second cornerback spot got picked a lot by Ronald Darby. And so, John, you're not going to be able to pick apart Jarrian Jones. But again, just that one play with him versus Tet McMillan shows that, like, okay, Tyson Campbell is still the guy. He's still the best cornerback that we have right now. So by doing that, though, by getting that nickel cornerback, we were able to kind of fortify both spots with Jourdan Lewis. And I like that. And I love that he can play inside out, gives a lot of flexibility. And like I said, allowing Travis Hunter, it might be an underrated pickup. And also Eric Murray was a guy who played. I mean, it wasn't hard for me to imagine he'd be the best safety out there, but I wasn't sure if he would be the best part of our secondary because he was kind of the weak link in the Texans secondary from what I hear. But he ended up making some fantastic plays. He was the reason why, if I'm not mistaken, he was the reason why Foye Olukun got that interception off the deflection. And he made a beautiful hit stick tackle that made the receiver drop the ball. And that was a game changer. That was on 3rd down, and it looked like a 1st down. And that, to me, that was game changing because we took over and scored from there, right? So Eric Murray made some really nice plays. And Andrew Wingard is playing a lot better than, like, usually Eric Winder has kind of been the placeholder or he's the backup, and I just remember 2 years ago when we were all clamoring for Andre Cisco to start over Andrew Wingard. And now look at us. The Jets gave up. I mean, it was to Aaron Rodgers, so it was a little different. Jets just gave up 34 points, and that's who Cisco plays for right now. Jaguars only gave up 10, and Andrew Winger's playing with us. So I still think we'll get better play out of our safeties. Where I'm at right now is if we're able to upgrade that nose tackle spot where Devon Hamilton is playing with somebody, make some kind of trade, some kind of deal for somebody. Maybe look at we already did a deal with the Saints, but look at any other team that's starting to look maybe to sell off some assets. If we can just get like a beefy nose tackle guy to like really stuff the run and push the pocket, which again, most of the time, if you have that, you hang on to that guy because there's not enough of them out there, as you can tell. I think if we're able to get that, that will make our safeties play that much better. And I think that will have a bigger impact because I was torn between, like, do we need a new safety or do we need still interior defensive line? If we get the interior defensive line, those 2 safeties are good enough to play for the season, and maybe we'll upgrade them in the draft or something like that. And we got to see what Ransaw is if we're ever able to get him back on the field. It looks like he'll probably be out for the I wouldn't say the entire year, but he is on injured reserve. And usually, when a rookie spends most of camp hurt and they end up on injured reserve for the first few games, it's not a good sign for them getting any playing time this year. So I think we're gonna have to wait a year to see what Caleb Branshaw is. But otherwise, else the Jaguars team looks good.